On the 3rd of February this year, in a glass hall in Dubai full of presidents and ministers, one of the richest oil states on the planet quietly bought its way into the business of bringing extinct animals back to life. Everyone reported the mammoths. Almost nobody asked the obvious question: why would a country sitting on an ocean of oil money care about a dead bird from Mauritius? Stay with that question, because the answer is a lot more interesting than the animals. The United Arab Emirates controls somewhere around 6% of the world's proven oil reserves. It is not short of cash, and it is not short of ways to spend it. So the moment a state like that opens its own treasury for de-extinction, you know the extinct animals are not really what the check is for. They are the poster. The deal is happening behind the poster. Let me tell you what was actually signed, because the details got lost in the noise about woolly mammoths. The setting was the World Government Summit, the yearly gathering where world leaders sit around and argue about the next 50 years. The announcement carried the name of Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed, the Crown Prince of Dubai, which in the UAE is about as high as an endorsement goes. At the center of it was something the Emiratis and a Texas company called Colossal Biosciences named the BioVault. Think of it as a genetic ark, a physical store of cells, tissue, and DNA, built with the stated goal of holding samples from more than 10,000 species. Bin Lam, who runs Colossal, called it a modern-day Noah's Ark, which is the phrase everybody reaches for the second they see the thing. But there was a second half to this deal, and it is the half that tells you what is really going on. The UAE did not simply fund the vault. It bought a stake in Colossal itself. Forbes put the Emirati commitment in the 9-figure range, folded into a larger funding round that has now pushed the total money raised into the company towards $600 million. So this was never charity. It was an investment. The UAE did not just pay for the Ark, it bought shares in the shipbuilder. And then they did something that gives the whole game away. They chose where to put it. They did not bury the vault in a research campus on the outskirts of the city, the way you would if the only goal was to protect the samples. They installed the lab and the vault inside the Museum of the Future. If you have never seen it, it is that giant silver ring wrapped in flowing Arabic script that sits on every Dubai postcard printed in the last 4 years. It is one of the most photographed buildings on the planet. It is a tourist attraction. It is where the city takes visiting royalty and busloads of school children. Compare that to the way the world actually preserves biological material when it is serious. The Svalbard Seed Vault, humanity's real backup drive for crops, is drilled into the side of a frozen Arctic mountain where practically no human ever sets foot, because seeds do not need visitors. The UAE built the exact opposite of that. A vault designed, first and foremost, to be looked at. That single choice reframes everything. The animals are the story. The vault is the stage, and the real thing on sale here is the picture of a nation planting its flag at the front of the future. Once you understand that, you can finally answer the question we started with. You can see, layer by layer, what an oil state actually gets out of extinct animals. The first thing it gets is legitimacy, and Colossal needs it badly. Here is a fact that tends to get buried under all the Jurassic Park headlines. Colossal has never made a single dollar from de-extinction. Not one. There is no mammoth to sell, because there is no mammoth. The company carries a valuation north of $10 billion entirely on the promise of animals that do not exist yet. Whatever real money flows through it comes from side businesses, a livestock and pet cloning operation called Viagen, and a software spin-out called Form Bio. The story is resurrection. The actual product, for now, is laboratory tools. A company built on a promise like that runs on one fuel, and it is belief. It needs governments in the room. It needs the quiet signal to every other investor that this is inevitable, that serious people with serious money are already committed. A sovereign state signing a 9-figure check delivers exactly that signal, instantly. When the UAE steps, and nobody can call this a science fair project anymore, that endorsement is worth more to Colossal than the money attached to it, and the UAE understands the trade completely. The second thing the UAE gets is harder to see, and it is the one worth slowing down for. Data. A biobank is not a freezer. It is a library. Whoever holds the samples and the genetic sequencing that comes out of them is sitting on a data set, the genomes of thousands of species, plus the machinery to read and rewrite them. That machinery is called synthetic biology, and it is quietly turning into one of the most valuable fields of the century, reaching into medicine, agriculture, food, and materials. You cannot simply buy your way to the front of a field like that with oil money. But you can host the vault. You can own a piece of the company. You can put your name on the ark and make sure you are standing on the deck when the whole thing grows into an industry. This is not a guess about Emirati motives, by the way. They have told us. The UAE has said over and over in public that it is building for the world after oil. It has thrown money at artificial intelligence. It has stood up a space agency and a Mars program. Seen against that backdrop, de-extinction stops looking like a whim and starts looking like strategy. It is one more bet on a science that has not paid off yet, except this one arrives wrapped in the most shareable packaging money can buy. Extinct animals are simply the most beautiful front door into synthetic biology that exists. So the honest summary of the deal is this. The UAE is not buying mammoths. It is buying an early seat in the biotech century, and it is paying for that seat with the one thing a young resurrection company cannot manufacture for itself, which is credibility. And now we get to the part that sits badly, because there is a version of a genetic arc that would actually be worth cheering for, and this may not be it. We know a real biobank can save real species, because it already has. Look at the black-footed ferret, North America's most endangered mammal, a species that dropped to a tiny handful of survivors and grew so inbred it was heading for a genetic dead end. Then scientists cloned a female named Willa from cells that had sat frozen since the 1980s. Willa never had offspring in her lifetime, but her clone's descendants are now among the most genetically valuable ferrets alive, because those decades-old cells carried diversity the living population had lost. That is what a working ark looks like. Quiet, unglamorous, aimed at a species almost nobody has heard of, measured in whether the animal survives, not in how the building photographs. Hold that image next to a 10,000 species vault built inside a tourist landmark, and the contrast does the arguing for you. The people whose actual job is conservation have noticed. David Mallon, a scientist connected to the IUCN, the body that keeps the world's official red list of threatened species, has been blunt about Colossal's choices. Some of the company's targets, he has said, are not a conservation priority. Underneath that polite phrasing is a sharp accusation. The money and the attention pouring into de-extinction are not flowing toward the species that scientists say are most desperate for help. They are flowing toward the species that photograph well. The mammoth, the dodo, the dire wolf, the headliners. So when a petrostate builds its ark inside a landmark and stocks it with charismatic celebrities of the animal kingdom, the question is not rhetorical. Is this protecting biodiversity or performing the protection of biodiversity? Those are two completely different products, and only one of them actually requires the animals to come back. You can hold both sides of this at once, and you probably should. A vault that genuinely preserved endangered genetics could do real, lasting good. Frozen cells have already pulled species back from the edge. That part is true and not worth being cynical about. But the specific shape of this particular deal, the equity stake, the vault in the postcard building, the sovereign branding, the preference for famous animals over the quiet priority list, tells you which layer is holding the weight. Whatever good it might one day do for a species is somewhere downstream. The good it does for a national image showed up the day the check was signed, which leaves the reason any of this matters beyond one summit in one city. For as long as anyone can remember, deciding which vanishing or vanished species deserved a second chance was a job for biologists, museums, and conservation groups scrapping over thin budgets. What changed on the 3rd of February is that a sovereign wealth fund walked into that room and sat down. The instant the money behind de-extinction stops being charitable and starts being national, the question of which animals return stops being a scientific one. It quietly becomes a question of whose story they serve and whose flag flies over the ark. The UAE did not buy an extinct animal. It bought a place at the front of the line where someone gets to decide what the future of life on this planet is allowed to look like. And the mammoth, the dodo, the whole gleaming silver ring in the middle of Dubai may turn out to be the most expensive thing anyone has ever paid for the privilege of being seen there first. So here is what that money is not doing. While a vault for animals that do not exist yet goes up inside a landmark, real species are slipping away right now, this year, with no summit and no crown prince and no check to save them. I made an entire video about that exact gap, about the living animals we are letting disappear while we spend fortunes chasing the dead ones. Watch while we resurrect the dead, the living are vanishing faster next. It is the other half of this story, and it is the half nobody is funding.